Yeah, one time my dad cheated on my mom with the lady, her best friend who was our neighbor, and she was married too. And I was like 10 or 11, and I just walked up to her house and knocked on the door, and she answered, and I was like, "Hey, can I have my daddy back?" And then I went, and she freaked out and like shut the door in my face, and me and my mom just laughed about it.
Family brings joy, it's childhood destroyed. Hey, it's Tammy's boy. Tammy's boy, Tammy's boy. Hey, it's Tammy's boy.
Tammy's Boy Podcast is intended for entertainment purposes only. Jon Carden is not a licensed therapist. He is just a friend.
Hey, welcome to Tammy's Boy, everybody. I'm John, and I had a stepdad who thought the History Channel was the same as college. So I have a bachelor's degree in American Pickers. This is a show where we tend to talk about parenting. Actually, that's all we talk about are parents, and usually it leads to some fun stories and possibly a little bit of trauma. This is my talented producer and now my good friend, Cole Garrett.
That's right. How are we doing, everybody? We got a great episode for you today. The full video is going to be available on YouTube and Spotify. Please make sure that you like, comment, and subscribe wherever you're watching it or listening to it. I think you should give it a watch because I think it looks pretty good myself, but that's just me. Wherever you do it, please give us a shout out, whatever you can. We're doing this for you guys, and without your help, we can't make them bigger and better, which we want to. That's enough out of me. John, tell them who we got on the couch today.
Well, Tammy's kids, today we have the co-host of the Two Girls, One Blunt podcast. She recently filmed a special for LMAOF for OnlyFans, which I did. We did together.
We did.
It was a shared experience.
That's how we met, over trauma bonding about our parents.
Yep. And it is Jaime-Lee Simmons, everybody.
That's me. Happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we did. We trauma bonded there. That's one of the reasons that you're here is because of that night where we're sitting there talking, and I'm like, all right, yeah, we have a lot to talk about, for sure.
Yeah, we do.
Like with your life, I think we're gonna have to take it in periods. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I think you're gonna do like 2 or 3 episodes, like easily, because we sat down and talked. We talked about like maybe a 5-year period of your childhood.
Yeah,
we didn't really
so much.
Yeah, exactly. We didn't talk about like a grand, scape of it. It was just like a small piece of the timeline, and there was a lot to talk about. There was a lot to talk about. It was crazy.
Yeah.
I won't say it's crazy, but it was like, for me, any time that somebody I know went through hard shit as a childhood, I know it sounds fucked up, but in a weird way, it makes me happy because I'm like, oh, okay, I have a better chance of getting this person.
Yeah, I agree. When I'm like, oh, okay, you get me. I used to always think like I could never be friends with or date anyone who like never went through shit, because I was like, you just like won't fundamentally understand who I am as a person, or why I think the way I do or react the way that I do. I need somebody who like sees that, but then has also done the growth to understand and either like guide me in moments or have respect for the work I put in.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel the same way. I feel like we've had to overcome a lot, and you've got to appreciate where we are versus where we have been,
and where we could have ended
and where
up.
we could have been. Like, I am on a completely different path than I would have been if I would have just maintained contact with my mother.
Yeah.
Not even just like not gone through the things that I went through. If I would have just cut contact at one point, I'd be a completely different person.
I think about that too. Some people get so afraid of like cutting contact with family members. And sometimes it's the best thing that you can do for those people. One, for them to grow, but 2, for you to protect your peace.
Yeah, it seems like this dramatic thing. It seems like this huge mountain to overcome where like I'm cutting them out of my life.
Yeah.
But if you actually break it down and pro and con it, it's not that big of a mountain. You're actually cutting a lot of bad stuff out of your life that you're comfortable with.
Yeah.
And that you're tolerant of. Instead of like, you're cutting the bad stuff out, but like the good, what am I trying to say?
You're making room for like the good. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Like you can't grow if you have to like blow up your old life to have a new one. And that if that requires you to be a different person, then that means it requires you to operate differently, think differently, and that you need space to heal. You cannot do that in the environment that fucked you up.
Absolutely. You cannot heal in the same place that made you sick.
It's
Yeah.
also
That's the
like
saying,
with
yeah.
cutting out a parent, like it comes to a point where you have to realize that this person isn't some godly figure. This is a person. Like, yes, I'm
Absolutely.
cutting out my mother, but this mother is a person who is currently a detriment to my mental state and possibly physical.
Yeah.
I mean, there was a point where I would do anything for my mom.
Yep.
Like,
Same.
absolutely. We'd give every piece
I was
of ourselves.
afraid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we always start this off, like, let's just go ahead and get in. We always start this off really simply. It's just the simple question is like, who raised you?
You both just said things that I wrote a poem called Mother Nature about my mom.
Yeah. Read it.
And I feel like I'll just read this. I wrote this in high school. It's kind of dark,
No, read
but
it.
it will give you a good idea of like what it felt like to be in her presence, I guess.
Okay.
You know what? It's sad too. Because I was about to like describe her. I just like caught myself. I was about to describe her as like the person she was when I was the victim. And I also look at her much differently now that I've had time apart and like healed. And I'm like, oh, you were just a hurt kid who was abused too. And like, I'm who she could have been had she like worked through her shit. That's like working through the generational trauma. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, who's my mom? It's like, well, me, but me as if I didn't work on myself. Do you know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
And it's just like, I have like empathy now and I can like look at her differently. But when I think of her, I immediately go to the trauma, which I'm like, I have to work on that. It's hard not to, but
Yeah. I
think that's a part of the healing process.
I think of it too. I do that too sometimes. But also with, my mom, as crazy as it was, it's impossible to have a parent and not have at least one good memory. I mean, I don't think it's possible. It's very possible. But in most aspects, even in traumatic childhoods, in things that other people would identify as trauma was still kind of fun for me. Like I look back on it in a fond way. Like my mom, when she would leave a guy, she would get a restraining order.
I do think about that. There's a scene in Shameless where they like don't want Frank to get money or something. There's something like the cops are there. And so the young girls immediately know to be like, oh my God, he's molesting me. And like, it's so fucked up because you think about it and you're like, these kids are like 8 years old and they know to get this guy in trouble, like the psychological fucked up things that you learn.
Yeah.
But I love that shit. And I'm like, wow, that made me like so street smart.
Yeah.
To take those skills, I'm like, oh, look at all these pussy ass bitches who are raised in good households. You don't know shit about the streets. You know what I'm
You don't
saying?
know shit. I know. It gives you this edge.
lose you couldn't survive in like figuring it out.
Yeah,
you
couldn't make it. Yeah,
Yeah.
I know exactly what you mean.
So
My mom had this playbook. She would leave a guy, get a restraining order. They would escort them out of their house. Then me and my brother would have what we call Christmas. It's where we would literally go through with trash bags and just steal my stepdad's shit.
Yeah.
And it was one of my favorite memories growing up. I know it's bad, but it was still fun.
Oh yeah.
This dude that's been an asshole to you for like 6 years, 5 years, however long, you get to go through with a trash bag and steal some Harley Davidson knives.
When my dad cheated on my mom and he moved in with his new. It's like you probably shouldn't have done that, but I kind of like those memories.
What a good core childhood memory.
Yeah, one time my dad cheated on my mom with the lady, her best friend who was our neighbor, and she was married too. And I was like 10 or 11, and I just walked up to her house and knocked on the door, and she answered and I was like, "Hey, can I have my daddy back?" And then I went and she freaked out and like shut the door in my face. And me and my mom just laughed about it. She's like, "You want to go get some steamers?" she was like, good job, kid.
Well, you got to explain that you grew up in Boston real quick.
Oh yeah, I grew up in Boston.
That's going to put a lot of this into perspective real quick.
My
I was like,
mom's Irish Catholic. My dad's a Jew, and I'm a comedian with an alcohol problem who sleeps with comics. So here we are. We're doing great. Back to you, John.
Let's hear it. We got the poem?
Yeah.
All right, let's do the poem.
Well, we were just laughing. I'm going to suck it out of you guys now.
All right, let's do
I
it.
called it Mother Nature. I had to write it in a specific way because it was for an AP English class. But
Okay.
Mother Nature. My tree of life is consistently sucked dry from your callous tongue and carelessly poisoned by your aura. Roots, branches, twigs, all of me, snapped, stretched from beginning to end. Yet I am the gift that keeps on giving. And you take and you take and you scold, for the fruit isn't fresh and ripe the way you, Mother Nature, like it. My source of life diminishes as you rip every last fruit from my limbs. Mother, oh Mother Nature, where is your heart? Is it covered and constricted by your spiny ivy vines? Or is a cold, dark, gaping hole taken its place? With your wry smile, you tell me the sun will come and that the rain will water me. Yet I am flooded. I helplessly drown like a hunted animal, unable to cross the river to where grass is greener and safety is nearer. I am shot, chopped, and forgotten about by your savage self. You claim you're an almighty God, and that I shall drop to my knees for you. But my roots are deeper, my bark thicker. I have grown strong. I will no longer back down. You can throw what's left of me into your flameless fire, but I will never subside. In fact, Mother Nature, when you shrivel like a decaying brown apple that no one bothered to pick, and you grow old and alone, and your body can't take all the guilt of the turmoil you've caused any longer, I'll come and cover you in my flames until your body fully resembles what you truly are. Nothing but gray, insignificant, suffocating ash.
Damn, tell me how you really feel. Ooh,
I printed that out and put it under her door.
wow. Wow, that's like
That's
She's
heavy.
like, what did Mother Nature do to you?
You would think, like, why didn't a teacher pull me aside and go, do you need help?
that's the poetry equivalent of hit 'em up.
Yeah, they're like, this kid needs to be in therapy.
You should have just said "fuck you" in the click you claim. I mean, if I had to name it, I would. I listened intently, and I think if I had a name, I'd call it the taking tree, because I feel like it was like the opposite of the giving tree.
Well, you mentioned like being like your parents think you're a god or something, and then
Yeah.
you mentioned like taking from you, and then like there was like 3 things you guys said, and I was like, these are lines of my poem about my mom. So
It
and
played in
it's
perfectly.
copyrighted, so
Yeah, that is heavy, but I mean,
I
it's
called
also
it Mother Nature, so that you know it's like it's about my mom.
yeah.
And like nature just allows me to like do anything, encapsulate anything, I guess.
I definitely like the metaphor of you like the vines and like the way the
I had to do metaphors. It was like a metaphor poem.
yeah that's built of metaphors. It's
Yeah.
yeah, for sure.
But I can't do a metaphor for shit for stand up. So
Really?
I like suck at it. Yeah, because I like don't know pop culture because I was abused. And
I think it's usually either one or the other when you're abused. You either get absorbed in it because it's other people's lies and it's a way to distract and disassociate, or you disassociate in other ways and you really just don't give a shit about any of that.
I just had to work. I had no time.
Yeah,
I like became a shell of a human for a while.
How old were you when you started working?
Oh, under the table.
Yeah, but how old?
Well, yeah, I mean, every summer when I was like 10 years old in like middle school, I would make my own jewelry and I would go walk the beach with my friend and I wrote Jaime-Lee's jewelry and I had pins, but I would take all my birthday money and buy like expensive crystals. So like a pack of crystals on that bracelet would cost me like $30 plus the clasps and plus the 6 hours of time. And I was 10 years old being like, hey, this bracelet's going to be $65. And parents were like, what? And then I would tell them. And then they'd be like, okay, that makes sense. And it looked good. And I would go home with like $600 on a day's work, walking the beach. This was pre the housing crash, like 2008.
Yeah, this is when people had expendable income.
Yeah, they had expendable income and people brought cash to the beach.
and
What a
it was,
crazy
like,
concept.
Before crystals are like what they are now too. You were like ahead of the curve.
Oh, yeah.
No shit. You were a
I've been
pioneer.
connected.
You were a pioneer. You're basically the Burt's Bees.
You've always been like a little entrepreneur.
That's cool.
Yeah, my mom, like growing up when shit was good, it was good up like till 10. My dad owned a masonry company. So he did like the Newberry Street apartments, which are these really rich, nice, like high rises in Boston. And then the Big Dig, which is the tunnels that you go under.
Okay.
So he did a bunch of stuff like that. And then my mom, because she was like a stay-at-home mom from the projects, had no job, no college, no like education. She like got into network marketing. I didn't know what it was back then, but she worked for a company called Senegence and did like lipstick. And she like had her whole van decaled like Lips by Kelly, and my mom was crushing. Yeah, and so everything was good, and they just like I watched my parents work for themselves.
What's your earliest memory of your mom?
Earliest memory of my mom? God, I don't know. Her yelling. There There's two. She asked me to hold my baby sister. It was like a baby on a couch. And I was like, I don't know, maybe 6 or something. And I zoned out watching Arthur and I dropped her and she bashed her head off the side of a coffee table.
Oh no.
Yeah, and she was crying. And then like growing up, my sister started bashing her head against walls and I like thought it was my fault from the time I dropped her. But I think it was my parents.
Was that like a known thing? Like your mom watched you do that?
No, she like heard it and she was like, "What happened?" And I didn't know how to lie or anything.
Did your sister ever like hold that against you? She's like, "You're fucking."
No, but I'd be like, "You're retarded because I dropped you on your head." So
It didn't get brought up to you in a negative way, but that poor child.
oh yeah, I brought it up all the time to make her know, and I dropped her on her head.
Was there ever a moment where your mom's
asserted
like,
dominance.
your mom was like, "Don't hand Jamie the plate of sausages, okay? We know what she'll do with it."
Yeah. But then another time, my mom was always like pretty strict as well. And I remember I was such a picky eater growing up. I think I like am on the spectrum, and I don't think I'm like, all these issues I had growing up as a kid, I just wasn't being catered to in the way that I needed. Yeah. My mom would force me to eat food I hated. I'm a big texture person and nothing could touch.
Yeah.
And if it wasn't exactly how I wanted it, I refused to eat it. And I remember my mom would make me sit at the coffee table until I ate. And sometimes I'd fall asleep with my face like in the food. Like I'd just fall asleep at the table. And then I'd wake up in the morning and be like, I refuse to eat it. And my mom would be like, all right, well, you took your punishment. Like you fell asleep at the table. But yeah, so that's kind of abuse, right?
I don't think you need kind of in there. Making a
remember
child
that.
sleep in food.
But she was also so cool. She'd be like, have all your friends over. I'm making Kraft mac and cheese and hot dogs. And like, you can go in the yard and whatever. And she would just like I would always have people at my house. She was like always the cool mom.
You think
until shit hit the fan.
Do you think she was like overly strict about that stuff because it's like that's something she could control?
Well, yes, I think partially it's control, but I also think she was the youngest and a lot of things, happened to her growing up abuse-wise and just traumatic situations, and like she had no one to protect her. So I think she was like really like communicative on just making sure I was okay and knowing where I was at all times. And my mom would teach me like street smarts. Like she'd be like, the moment I could talk, she'd be like, if you're out in public, whatever, if someone tries to touch you, she was like, it's not like all this stuff. I knew what rape was like when at 3 years old.
Oh, wow.
Like and I remember my whole childhood, I was so hyper aware that I was like, thank God my mom like taught me, because my town is full of pedophiles too. Like the principals, multiple principals, our neighbor, like everyone was a fucking pedophile. So I always remembered, and I was like, thank God she like taught me those like that knowledge and whatever. But then as an adult, I'm like, fuck, it kind of does suck that my innocence was taken away and I couldn't just have a normal life and not think about those things. Because you almost sexualize yourself in a way.
Oh, I know exactly.
You know what I'm
you
saying?
mean.
I was always embarrassed of my body because of that. I felt so much shame, even though nothing had happened.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, I had a lot of sexual trauma growing up. One of the things my mom would always do, she was like tell a story, and it was so embarrassing for me as a kid. But she would tell this at like dinner parties, and like people coming over. I wouldn't say dinner parties. It's a bunch of her friends coming over to a trailer to drink beer. Mm-hmm. But it wasn't a dinner party. It was like an ice house party. Maybe a Zima party. But. They would come over, and me and my brother would take baths together growing up. And when I was young, and I was like 3 or 4 years old, I asked, I was like, why is his penis bigger than mine? And my mom would tell that to anybody that would listen. And it gave me this weird body dysmorphia to where, like, even when I got older, I had no idea what size I was or anything like that, nor did I want to know. I had this deep shame about it. And it literally came
from like a childhood experience.
From that, yeah. And like it was brought up a lot. Like I'm not saying it was brought up once. It was brought up hundreds of times throughout my childhood.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's basically like your whole childhood. Your mom's just saying like, yeah, John has a little dick.
She's shaming me for having a small penis. You know what I mean? And it was crazy.
Well, your mom was shaming you?
Oh yeah, it was like the moral of the story. It's why she would tell it in a sense.
Kind of like to make fun of you.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Oh, that sucks.
Yeah, and I mean, I had this weird fucking dysmorphia as I got older. And like that was ceased after therapy. You know what I mean? I don't have any issues with that whatsoever anymore.
Like, I'm a man now.
I mean, I'm very
Big.
confident in, in who I am. But that's, aside from the point, it really fucked me up for a long time.
Yeah.
And it was just like, and that was only part of it. Like, my dad threw me Playboys when I was 9 years old and said, ask questions. And, so I was hypersexualized too.
My mom would be like, do you know what dry humping is? And I'm like, I'm 10.
Yeah.
And then she'd be like, well, it's real good when you want to start. And I'm like, what? She's like, you don't have to do, like, what? She would like talk to me about things. Everyone talked about sex in my household. And there is a part of me that loves how open we were, because before she got crazy, like, none of that stuff in those open conversations like weren't used against me.
Okay.
Once she became a drunk, then it was like, oh, you can no longer, now I had to like, we can't have those conversations.
The confidant was gone.
Yeah. And then as I got older, my mom would be like, I got bullied because my mom would make me, I remember one of my best friends, he had a hot tub, and all the kids would go, like, we were like middle school. We'd go to his house to go in the hot tub. And his family was such a good family, like, so respectful. His family also knew my mom was a little nuts. Her nickname in town was called Crazy Kelly. And like, if you went to my hometown and go, what's Jamie's mom's name? They won't say Kelly. They'll say Crazy Kelly. So they kind of like knew what was up,
Yeah.
But my mom would be like, you have to wear a one piece and a t-shirt. And I'd be like, no, like, that's so embarrassing. Like, I look like a loser. I'm already bullied. I had a bowl cut. Like, I'm not, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm hanging out with the popular kids, but I'm like the punching bag. And so I'm like, no, I'm not wearing a one piece. And she was like, you can't go. Their dad's going to try to fuck you. Like, it was always the dad's going to try to fuck me. And like, they just want to have sex with you. And I'm like, I'm a kid and I'm just trying to hang out with my friends. And so I had to go wear one pieces, and then all like my friends' older brothers would be like, what up, one piece? And they all made fun of me. So there was so much shame around my body, and I'm like, every old man wants to fuck me. And I got like harassed by my gym teacher, who would like only pick on me for my boobs in gym class, and I'd have to go change. But like, somebody would be wearing the same thing and not have to change. There was like things like that happening all the time. So there's a ton of shame. And then I think because I was hypersexualized, I went crazy with sex.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Too.
Now I have an OnlyFans, topless comic, VIP. Thanks, Dad.
What's up with you? Like, because I know your bio dad wasn't in the picture at all, really, right? What do you know
No.
about him?
His name was Jimmy. I think he's like a flaming ginger
Okay.
Irish guy. He was much older than my mom. And my mom had me at 22. And he would just beat the shit out of her. And was like a drunk, abusive person. And then he like wanted nothing to do with me, really.
Yeah.
And so my mom kind of like left with me in her car and would take me everywhere. So that's basically it. And then I think we tried meeting him, and he was like not interested when I was older. So I was like, okay.
Damn.
Yeah.
You want to hear something crazy?
What?
So my mom, Tammy, she wasn't raised by her father. She was raised by her great aunt, her grandmother, and her great uncle. And her dad said he was run out of town. His name was Horace. And he moves to southern North Carolina. And we lived in like southern Virginia, northern North Carolina. My mom tracks him down at 25, probably 27, 26, something like that. I think I was 4 or 5. And we go to the door to the grandfather I've never met. Never met this man. My mom has never met him. And the person that answers the door, her name is Tammy Jane Lassiter. And that's my mom's name. And so my grandfather literally had another family, and I've met some of them are great people, but then named his daughter the exact same thing of the daughter that he abandoned.
That's so fucked up.
And so my mom literally, like, she says, I'm looking for Horace Lassiter. I'm Tammy Jane Lassiter. I'm his daughter. And the girl goes, I'm Tammy Jane Lassiter too.
Dude, I'd be freaking out. I'm like, am I being punked?
Yeah, it was a wild moment. That was like my child. I remember that vividly. I remember being in that house. I remember all of that.
Because it's already hard enough to watch them be like the family member to another family and like abandon you, and you like internalize that and be like, why not me? Like what makes me not good enough or whatever. But then to also be like, no, I was literally replaced.
Yeah, 100% replaced.
On top of that,
And that's why I do identify my mom as a person and not just a mom. It's because I can't even imagine going through that.
I can't imagine the shit my mom went through. And I think about it as an adult paying bills and the shit my dad put her through financially. And she has 3 kids, no college education. She became a like construction worker and like would work all day like a dude and be like exhausted and then like want to have a beer. And then that just turned into like never putting down alcohol. And then who she was drunk became her. You know what I mean? But I think about the weight and the stress of like constantly having the rug pulled out underneath you and having the person you love just like turn on you. And I'm like, I think about just getting like cheated on in a relationship and fighting and how I can't even go to comedy for 3 days sometimes because I'm like mentally like shutting down and dissociating.
Yeah, I know that feeling.
Which that dissociation comes from me dissociating as a kid, you know? And I think about that. So there's like, that's where wisdom comes from, is because you like can look, especially when you separate yourself from your emotions and what happened from you. You could do that for your parents as well. And you're like, the empathy I feel. You know?
Yeah.
I don't have sympathy for their actions, but I have empathy for what they went through.
What they went through, yeah. There's a big difference between sympathy and empathy. There's a huge difference.
Because I'm such like a hard ass too, where I'm like, if you choose not to heal, like fuck you, like you're weak. I think it's a weak trait to sit in victimhood and to sit in your sadness and like your depression. And I'll say that to myself when I'm depressed. Like, this is weak. Get up, be disciplined. And it's like people don't want to hear that, but it's true. And then we like cling on to what happened to us so that we can remain victims because that's all we know. Because it's easier to do that than it is to fucking look in the mirror.
Yeah.
And take control over. Because if you just say in that, you're going to become the exact same person you don't want to become.
And discipline is the toughest form of self-love. It is,
and it's self-love.
Absolutely. But I think it's the hardest form because it's what people like. The people that need it are never taught it.
Yeah, if you were never given love, how can you love yourself?
Absolutely.
But it's like, that was me, you know what I mean? And I had to teach myself how to love myself, like just brushing my teeth before bed.
Yeah.
Like not abandoning myself in the small moments, getting up and taking a shower when I'm so depressed and I don't want to. Like,
I know what you mean.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. I've had days where I just like, I don't feel like doing shit. And it's like, I will literally lay here and I will binge a show and I would just disassociate for the day because associating feels like too much.
Yeah.
Here. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think we're uncommon for that. I think that's pretty common, especially in today's age. Yeah. I think back in the day, it was just like, a Victorian wasting disease, where somebody would just lay in a bed for months and months at a time. But now, people understand what, clinical depression is and chronic depression is. So I think it happens a little bit more often.
Well, also people are more open to talk about it too. Like, who knows how many people did do that back in the day, but you couldn't talk about that.
Yeah, emotion was weakness at certain points in history, right? Stoicism was the favorite.
And there's almost something, I think, like with our generation, I love that we're talking about therapy. I love that a lot of people have more emotional intelligence and we're educating ourselves. And I think that I'm watching like the new generation of kids being raised and the things they're being taught. And I'm like, wow, that's good. You know what I mean? Like, that's incredible. But I kind of miss part of the old days where it was like, shut up, go to work and get over it. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, especially like you think about it in other cultures, like, do you think Asian households have depression? Like, obviously, but I'm saying it doesn't matter. It's like, get up and you do what you have to do and you have to push through it. And there's power in that because sometimes that does get you out of it.
Yeah, sometimes.
I think there's a balance.
Sometimes
it has the highest suicide rate possibly. But that's just one country.
Sometimes
do they really? I love them. Like, they don't give a fuck, and they're like, people are dying over there.
Those Asians, they just go on,
Where's the suicide forest at?
Because what pushed me and made me.
That's Japan.
Yeah.
Let me fact check it. Let's find out.
Yeah, it's definitely. But
highest rate of suicide is gonna still be Seattle. Watch.
What pushed me was like, it's like, all right, life's not happening to you, it's happening for you. So like, get up and do what you can to get out of this. Like, when I was going through everything, I chose to be sober, like straight edge growing up. I put myself in every high class that I could. And I was like, I saw what was happening with my family. And I was like, I want to go to college and not live this life anymore. So I can sit here and be like, wow, my family life sucks and I'm a kid. Or I can take responsibility and be like, I'm going to do whatever the fuck I can to not be in this, and have fucking blinders on until I got there. And the moment I got there, then I gave myself the time to breathe, which is why I chill a lot more now. Cause it's like, well, I feel like I'm in like the kid phase because I've been like an adult since I was 10.
Yeah.
You know?
I want to ask you something. This is like something I wouldn't ask anybody else, but I'll ask you because I like I said, me and you relate a lot to what we went through. And how many times in your childhood do you actually feel safe? Like 100% safe?
I never. It's hard because I don't have a lot of memory.
Okay.
Anymore. I have to like call my sister and ask because I have, when you dissociate, you have memory loss. So I forget entire friendships and like things that I've done until like something like reminds me.
Yeah.
So before I caught my dad cheating on my mom, life was good. And I felt very safe then. I had a great, I'm very blessed that I saw what it was like to have a good family dynamic. We go to family parties and that family dynamic is healthy. Like great Christmases, family trips. Like I was in AAU gymnastics. Like I went from that to being like a welfare fuel assistant EBT kid. And like my mom beating me. You know what I'm saying? It was just like, so I think when I was like much younger, I felt safe. But the moment like that change started and my dad left, I don't think there was a moment I ever felt safe. And I don't think I ever felt it until I took the time to heal in 2021. So it was a long time before I even like felt like I was safe.
Did that play into a lot of, before 2021, did that play a lot of the unsafe with like, your dad leaving and the feelings from that? I think what I'm asking is like, how did that play into your relationships early on? Before 2021.
Well, I think that I became like so what's the word I'm looking? Independent. Like I was hyper independent, and hyper independence, like it makes it hard for me to like trust other people to do things for me because I always had to do it myself, and that was the only way it'd be done right. Also, I couldn't risk having it be fucked up because there's not a single person I could fall back onto. Like I was homeless for a while, and I remember calling like my cousin, and I was like, "Can I crash on your couch for a night?" And he was like, "Oh, my roommate like is kind of weird about that." I was like fucking living out of my car. I had a best friend like be like, "Yeah, you could stay at my house." And then I drove an hour from my work at 2 a.m. and the doors were locked and no one answered. So it was like, I remember one time hitting a dude up I met on Bumble and being like, I literally need a place to stay. I'm homeless. And he was like, yeah, come crash on my couch. And I was like, sick.
That's awesome.
We're actually friends to this day, but because he like saved me.
Yeah.
He was a good guy.
Earth Angel.
Shout out Billy. He's got a big dick too.
Hey, the Tammy's Boy podcast loves you, Billy. We love you. So he gave you a place. How long did you stay with Billy?
Just a night.
Just one night?
It was literally just one night. Yeah, and then I was like, thank you. But he was like, because he was like, no, you can just stay and didn't even try. I was like, Mama's gonna suck you off now. I wanted to anyways. I was a homosexual once. I understand, man. But yeah, so like I think it played a lot in relationships where it was just like I never felt like I could fully rely on people, and they constantly showed me why I couldn't rely on them.
Yeah.
And so then it just like bred this like thing inside me of like, am I worthy? How come no one is willing to step up for me? And like I feel like I am a good person who like loves, and I always am trying to like make the right decision when it's hard to make that, like having character and integrity, especially when no one's like looking. And I'm like, and all this bad shit's happened to me, and I'm like, can't somebody show up for me? Like, I don't know what it, my sister will, because she obviously went through the same shit. Guys will be like, yeah, stay with me. She's never had to pay for a thing. She's living with people, fully taken care of. And I was like, I never had that. And I can't tell if it was because she's the middle kid, so she's used to having like people, and that's the energy she put out. And I'm like the oldest, hyper independent.
Yeah.
And so people like were like, well, she's good on her own. And I think a lot of times I was going through things, and a lot of people didn't even know what I was going through.
I was gonna ask, during that time, did you not put up a front, but I mean, did you try to hold yourself as I'm a strong person?
No one could yeah. And it was like, I have such a good poker face, especially like with emotions. Now I've allowed myself to like, I used to never cry. My dad died, my sister died, I didn't cry. Like I was like, I got to go to work tomorrow. That sucks.
Yeah.
You know? And it was like, and now I allow myself to like feel my emotions so that they're not like stored in my body. Cause I do think that that's a huge cause of a lot of people's physical health symptoms. But yeah, growing up, I was like the stoic, like top of my class in every club, always doing everything, working 5 jobs, like getting promotions fast. Like I was go, go, go. And everyone was like, she's doing great.
Yeah.
I made shit happen no matter what. And I think.
Meanwhile, you're doing well in spite of what you're going through.
And I was struggling so hard, and I just wanted somebody to like take a load off me.
I think people need to understand you were doing well in spite of what you were going through, not because of what you were going through.
Yes.
If you had something to push you at home and something to actually like support you, love you, and teach you, then there's always that thought. I know I have it too, where it's like, what could I have become?
Yeah.
You know, I was doing that with that. You know what I mean? Like I was headlining plays as a kid and doing things, and I was like, I showed talent in acting. I showed love for dramatic theater and all those things. None of that was fostered. The only thing that mattered was, you know, my ability to help my mother survive.
Yep.
And it was, can I work in a tobacco farm? Will that keep a step parent happy? You know, I did so many things growing up to make extra money for my mom so she could leave a man.
Yeah. And I was saying there's times where I didn't have hobbies because it was like, that's what it was. My role and like job was to like, well, okay, so my mom's a drunk and isn't buying food or shampoo or toothpaste, and I have 2 younger siblings. I became like Fiona Gallagher from Shameless.
Yeah.
And then like my mom is Frank, and like, you know, and it was like, okay, did mom drink tonight? Like everyone be on their best behavior, or like, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And like navigating that. I remember like a day in high school, I remember my mom was like hardcore drinking all the time. And I was working at Wahlburgers, the first Wahlburgers that Paul Wahlberg opened up in
Shout out
Hingham,
to Marky
Mass.
So
Mark.
Boston.
And it's so Boston. And I'm working at Wahlburgers after school. So my mom would sometimes be free and refuse to drive me anywhere. So I rollerbladed everywhere. Or I was in middle school taking buses to like into the city to like do what I had to do.
Wow.
And like I was super independent. I was hopping on flights when I was like a kid. My mom would just throw me on a flight by myself.
Yeah, you were basically Matilda.
Yeah, I resonated with that movie, and sometimes I'm like, it'll happen. I gotta practice more. But I do practice, and
I practice too, grabbing people by their pigtails and throwing them over fences. That's my favorite part.
yeah. What's it called? But so I woke up. I think my mom had like gone on a drunk tangent, so I'm on no sleep. Wake up at like 6 a.m. I do all the homework that I couldn't do the night before because I was dealing with my drunk mom trying to beat the shit out of me. I go to school, do all my classes and take tests. I go to soccer practice. I go from soccer practice, I hop on the town bus to go to another bus stop like 30 minutes away to take that bus and like to Wahlburgers, and then it didn't drop me off like nearby, so I'm walking on like a highway to get to where like a main road to get there. And then they allowed me to come in late because of my situation. And I learned that my mom would often get drunk and the town buses didn't run at night, and I needed a ride home from Hingham. My friends would never pick me up unless I gave them gas money, which I obviously didn't have. And my mom would get drunk and forget me, and I would just be like, it'd be like midnight and I'm in another town. I have to figure out how I'm getting home to go to school the next day. And so the manager, Josh, he lived in my hometown, and he started realizing what was going on, and because my mom would come in like shit faced and try to hit on him. And he was like, hey, I'll drive you home. You just have to stay until I like close out the place. And then that became our thing. I'd bring my homework and I would stay, and he would drive me home. He's now still a friend of mine, and he comes to my comedy shows whenever I'm in Boston.
That's sick.
And
Very
yeah,
nice.
I've known him for like, I don't know, since 2010.
Wow, it's an old friend.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's crazy. So there were some people who like helped me along the way that I was like very grateful for.
Yeah.
But one night I was at work, and my mom shows up, and she's like, I have to take Jamie out of work right now. And she like whispers something. I'm like, what's going on? After a crazy day, right? Like I'm doing practice, school, now I'm working. She goes, your dad just overdosed. We have to go pick him up and take him to the hospital or whatever. And I was like, now I'm like looking back and I'm like, why didn't we just get him an ambulance? Why did I physically have to pick up my dad's overdosed body out of a halfway house and drag him into a car while he can't speak, and I'm 16 maybe? And so me and my mom were picking him up like my dad was fucked up, put him in the car, bring him to the hospital. And then we get home, and then I have to study for 3 AP exams the next day. And I just went home and I was like, well, that's another day, and studied, and on 2 hours sleep went in and took all the exams. And I was still top of my class, suck my dick. So when anyone ever, I hate when comics too, like we're talking about like judging and like people you don't know what people have been through when you see it. I'm like, you have no idea the shit that I had been through to work, to have the work ethic, or like, I feel like people think things came easy to me because how I am now as a more healed person.
Yes, it's one of the reasons I love doing this podcast. And I love giving people the opportunity to be like, listen, I'm not the person that you see me as.
No.
And first off, I'm not made of my trauma. One of my favorite things that I learned in therapy was that we are not our trauma, we are our choices. Mm-hmm. Don't judge me by my trauma, judge me by my choices. Yeah. It's like my choices have led me to where I'm at in front of you right now. Mm-hmm. So you might want to respect those. Yeah. Because we're in the same place.
Because if you were given the same cards I was dealt, we wouldn't be standing in the same place right now.
No, you would be sitting on 7th Street in a diaper.
Yeah. And I could say that confidently about most people.
Yeah, me too. Absolutely.
Yeah. And then it's so funny too, because I always think there's this line in a song that I like, and it's just like wisdom born of pain. But it's like people who are super kind and like nice, people often like those are the people who get taken advantage of because people view it as weakness.
Yes.
But it's like sometimes we don't realize that you were born, like that kindness came from like crawling through the abyss of hell over and over. And it's like, oh, you think because I'm being nice that I'm weak and easy to be like manipulated. I'm like, you have no idea. I could figure 8 around you and verbally and mentally destroy you. You know what I'm saying? And
I'm
it's
a
like,
people pleaser,
and
not an idiot.
the restraint I hold to walk around and still be kind and like make the right decision. And it's like, why are you testing me? You know?
I don't know you.
But I'll let them figure it out themselves.
So, what happened with your dad's overdose? Is that what got him?
Yeah. So my dad was awesome. He was like the class clown. He's actually the reason I got into comedy.
Yeah, that was the Jewish.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
He was so funny. We would fuck with my mom and prank her all the time. Like big into Adam Sandler movies.
Did you hide her vodka bottle on the top of the fridge?
No, she wasn't a big drinker back then either. I think he might have been a little controlling. I don't know now, but like when I was younger, it seemed fine. But my mom was always good when she was with my dad. My dad never drank. He smoked weed here and there, and like maybe you saw him nurse a beer. But he was like always sober.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's crazy. So
what was the turn? Just like out of curiosity, before we get into like what happened with the dad, like what was the turn that led him? Like it was the cheating, right? And that's when your mom started going into the alcoholism. Yeah. Right after the cheating.
Yeah.
And it just built from there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, and while this is happening, so like this is like 3 years after he left. He left when I was 10, so around 8th grade. maybe 7th, going into 8th grade, maybe 2 years. That's when the drug stuff started happening. My dad fell off scaffolding at work and he broke his back. And he had to get back surgery and they prescribed him Percocets. And this was during the opioid crisis. And the doctors overprescribed my dad Percs. And he was like, I'm in so much pain and like, I need more. And they did. And then they hard cut him off with no like trailing him off or anything. And they were like, you're up, like, you know what I mean? And so when you can't get perks from your doctor and you have an addiction now, you go to street perks and then you spend all your money and then you go to oxys. And then when you can't afford oxys, you turn to heroin. And in that quick process of my dad going to heroin, he bankrupted his whole family and company, drained my mom's bank accounts, and through my mom, he was paying my mom $750 a week for child support. And then with his new wife, she convinced him that she shouldn't pay child support and he should support her kids. So my dad, the court ordered was like $89 for child support a month. Wouldn't even pay that. So like took all my mom's money, took her to court all the time just to fuck with her and drain her more. And then, yeah, my dad just became a full-blown heroin addict. But he was a smart Jew, you know? Those Jews got to start a business. And he decided to steal a prescription pad with his wife from the South Shore Hospital in Braintree, Mass. And they wrote fake scripts for Percs and Oxys. And my dad became the leader of a prescription drug ring in the South Shore of Boston. Within a couple years, we love a fast promotion. And
guess he got after it.
yeah, you know.
That's where you get your work ethic from.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, I know if shit goes bad, I'm still going to be making money. That shit's in me.
Hey, there is something to say for that. I swear to God, there is something to say for that. Because I have that mentality where it's like, I'll never be broke. I'll never be poor. There is always something I will do. I know too many things. I've learned too many things
I
in
have so
trailers
many
and
skills.
ghettos.
Jack of all trades, master of none.
Absolutely.
But
Most trauma kids are. We're like that because we had to be everything.
it's resourceful.
I can cook. I can clean.
Yeah.
I can fucking work on cars. I can
Oh my
do
God.
anything.
One of my exes, this is like a side story. This is so funny, but because my mom had to learn how to paint, I became her prep girl. So I would do like random side jobs in high school where one time I did landscaping, but it wasn't like mowing lawns. I was like digging trenches for pipes and shit.
Yeah.
And so I'm like doing like hard work in the sun or whatever. And, but so my ex was like trying to install shit and his like hang stuff up. And he was getting really frustrated. And he was like swearing at the wall. And I know I could do this in 2 seconds. And I was like, hey, I literally go, hey, babe, go make dinner. I got it. And he was like, what? And I was like, go make dinner. I'm going to take care of the walls. And I fucking patched the walls up, like sanded them, painted them after, like installed it, and then the dinner was made, and I was like, all right, sick. It was a 2-day process, but all of that, and I was just like, damn. He was like, you know so much, and I'm like, you have no idea the skills I've acquired. I can change a tire. Like, I've changed a tire so many times. I could do random shit.
You think you're gonna cheat on me? I have a particular set of skills.
Oh, and I do because I'm an FBI agent because I'm an expert at pattern recognition. Because when you live with con artists and drug addicts and alcoholics, they lie. So you have to, and you learn you learn how to read their body language, their eye movements, their breathing,
everything,
their footsteps. Yep. I know there's people listening who probably like, you know, a certain footstep and you're like the hair crawls up and you're like, oh, I got to be on edge. And now I have all those skills. I own a relationship and I'm like, you cannot fool me. I've picked up on so many of your patterns and behaviors. I just sense something's off immediately. I could be like, I could read someone's energy and be like, what's going on? You're having anxiety? Like, or, you know?
I had a really good ex, Chelsea. We were together for a while. She's like, you know, one of the best people I've ever dated in my life. And I would lie to her. And she would listen. And then she would be like, all right, now what's the real truth? And I would instantly tell her the real truth. But she knew that, like, my defense mechanism growing up was to lie about everything because the punishment was so severe, right? I would get, like, my head kicked in if I did one thing wrong.
Yeah.
So I grew up lying about shit because if they didn't find out, you know what I mean? There's a 50-50 chance. You know, there's a 50-50 chance of them not knowing. So let's run with it. But Chelsea was the first person ever to, like, see through it. And it grew me so much to the point where I didn't lie to her anymore. And it was the safe place for me where I'm like, it got to after we were together 3 or 4 years where there was no, what's the real truth? It was just the real truth.
That's such a beautiful place to get at.
Yeah.
I feel like I've never really had that with anyone. I'm like with somebody now, and I think it's kind of like that. And it's like, wow, yeah, their Instagram's logged in on my phone.
Wow.
And I was like, because they didn't have a phone, and I was like, hey, do you want me to log out? I keep getting it. And he's like, no, you can stay logged in. And I was like, whoa, never had that.
Yeah, that's wild.
Gave me his location right away, like offered it.
Wow.
I was like, okay, what are you hiding? You're being too honest. My spidey senses are tingling.
My trust issues have trust issues.
Yeah.
Oh man, that's funny. That's so fun.
But that's our brains, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah, why are you this honest?
Yeah, we're so wired.
Yeah, what's your game here?
Yeah, I think there's a huge part of healing too, like from our parent stuff and just in general of realizing that the safety mechanisms that we've used, or like the coping mechanisms that we've come up with, and the reactions and what thought processes that protected us in those bad moments no longer protecting us. So lying protected you, but it hurts you in the future.
It hurts you in the
and
future.
you literally have to train yourself out of that.
Absolutely.
That is the hardest thing because it's like habit forming. It's like
it also goes into self-worth. Like I didn't believe I was good enough for anything, so I'd lie about who I was. You know, because I had no self-worth whatsoever.
Yep.
And I didn't believe that anything I ever did was good enough because nobody ever told me that anything I did was good enough.
Yeah.
It always, like, if I washed my stepdad's truck, he would go through it with a white glove, and if I missed one spot, I was beaten.
Me too.
You know what I mean? I went through all these, dramatic forms of torture. We was talking about something a minute ago.
My mom would make me clean, like deep clean with toothbrushes, and they like
me too.
her and her friends would laugh, and they'd be like, Cinderella. They would call me Cinderella.
Yeah.
I wasn't allowed to do anything until I deep cleaned the whole house, and it was like crazy things too. Like,
yeah, one time I told my stepdad, I'm like, you guys treat me like a slave. And from that moment on, he called me slave boy. And he called me slave boy all the time. But he would also
we
call
have
us,
such a similar experience.
I know. He could call me punk ass bitch like that too.
God, I smoke like my mom. I just saw that.
Oh no.
She's always like that. She'll be like, sweet, what the fuck are you doing?
Hold on, let's get my mom.
She'll be like, Cinderella,
Hold on.
clean the fucking house before I beat your fucking ass.
Hey John, you gonna need to go get the Everclear. It's been a long day.
Dude, my mom would be like, go buy me cigarettes. And I'd be like, no. And then she'd be like, fucking buy me cigarettes or I'll beat you. And I'd be like, fuck. And then I have to go buy her cigarettes.
You got me.
Yeah.
You got me. How'd you know my weakness?
Yeah.
You got it. That was my weakness. Ass whoopings. I didn't know you knew.
I did fight back. Have you ever fought back?
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I beat out my mom.
Yeah. I mean, my mom always.
I got her arrested.
Mom always had sex with men bigger than me. It's like such a mean thing to do.
Oh, I know. You're like, I can't even, because now the men's on her side, and you're like,
Yeah.
you're not my dad.
Yeah.
Get out of here, Tom. Like,
Oh, my mom would do the thing with her, one of her husbands, where her and I would get into an argument. Her and I argued all the time, and because she would try to get me to lie for it. I was just sick of lying for my mom. I lied for my mom all the time. Like she
Yeah.
was smoking cigarettes.
oh, I do lie to my mom. I'd lie for my mom to CPS.
Yeah, me too. I've lied to her for the judge.
Yeah.
I've
She'd be
lied
like,
on
if
the
you
stand.
fucking tell the truth of what's going on in this fucking house.
Yeah, I've lied on the stand. I mean, my mom was like, "No, you got to tell them this, 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 and this, or they won't do this, this, and this."
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. And then we'll lose our money and our whatever. You're not going to be able to eat because if you tell the truth, there's going to be no food in the house.
1,000%. Yep. And then they put everything on you. And then you're like,
and you're
wait,
like, again, I'm 10.
Yeah.
Why am I wearing the bait of, like, the weight of
the weight of an entire household.
yeah.
It's like, you fucked up. I didn't do
that's
this.
why my shoulders are so tense.
Yeah, me too. I know.
I still got to let some of that go.
Me too. It's probably why I've got.
But it's hard when now you're an adult and you're like, damn, the weight is on me now. And it's like I never had the chance to be a kid and have the weight off me.
Well, that's what I wanted to talk about because I know I went through it. And I know you did too. It's like you're watching other people live recklessly, and I know I was always I don't know, but jealous.
So jealous.
Yeah, jealous is right. Like envious, like of like you don't have to worry about anything.
You get to just like start a business and fail, or like you can just like take up knitting as a hobby. Like,
Absolutely, and there's so much pressure on us to be perfect for everything that we do
and be the best.
and be the best.
And I
Yes.
was. Or I worked really hard to work my way up and hold my own in an area where people were like, "How did you get here?"
I always awarded
Willpower and determination.
I always awarded myself too as it was some superpower of being tolerant of crazy people.
Dude, go through what we went through. We have superpowers.
Yeah, I mean we do, but I mean like I can be around crazy people and it not affect me. Well, I'm actually kind of
More comfortable.
I'm actually more comfortable. I know.
I feel way more comfortable with like crazy people than I do like going to like a real conservative uppity event.
Yeah, if I'm in like an ACA meeting or like
But my skill also like growing up the way I grew up made me a chameleon, so I can fit in.
That's the other superpower that we had. I did
can
the same
fit
thing.
in with any group. You
Yep.
could be the nerds, the jocks, the rich people, the poor people, the
Yep.
mentally ill.
Yeah, it's one of the reasons that I can do this podcast.
Yeah.
It's because I can relate to so many different forms of childhood trauma. Because
Yeah.
I went through a fucking menagerie
Yeah.
of childhood trauma.
Yeah.
And like, I'm also like in this podcast, I noticed like I'm most fascinated by the good stories. Like like, what was that like? You know what I mean? It's like hearing about like Cinderella's real, or like the Neverland is real. You know, it's like there's a real place where parents care. They pack your lunches.
Oh my
Like,
God,
they go to
so-
PTA meetings.
Dude, so that's so funny because so I got kicked out in high school when I was a junior because I beat the shit out of my mom. It was self-defense. It was Halloween and I told her for like 2 weeks at an away soccer game, and then it was my friend's like birthday, and it was like the nerdy friend, like no one's drinking, we're literally having the most wholesome like theater party, and I wanted to go there, and my mom, I get home and I'm about to put my costume on and she's hammered and was like, "You're taking your brother out for fucking Halloween." And I'm like, "No, I have this, like, you're home, like, take David out, have him go with his friends. Let him go out by himself." She wouldn't let him go out by himself, wouldn't let him go with his friends. I had to be the one to do it. So it's like the control thing.
Yeah.
And I was like, "No, I'm not gonna do it." Now I'm dressed up as a sexy teacher. I have glasses on, my tits out, and a mini skirt and heels and red lipstick. And I'm in my mom's like room or whatever, and she's like doing this thing to my glasses and like in my face, and she does it real hard and it like hits me in the eye, and I scream and I'm like, "Get away from me!" And she kept doing it, and I don't like. It was the first time I ever stood up for myself. I've never hit somebody besides my mom. I full on punched her in the face, and she went down on the ground, and I went again. And then I got, and she was like, "Oh," and she was scared. It was the first time I saw my mom scared. And I was like, "Oh, you're not as powerful as you." And there was a switch where I was
Yeah.
like, "Oh, I'm not letting you have control over me." And I got up and I called the police and I go, "Hi, my mom hit me." And then because my mom was a town crazy, constantly getting arrested, they were there immediately, arrested my mom, and I was like, "Never fucking touch me again." And then I took her car keys and I was like, "I'll bail you out when I'm done with the party." I go, "David, have fun with your friends." I go, "You guys can throw a party here if you want."
Wow.
And then we all partied, and then I took my mom's car and I was like, "All right, I gotta go bail my mom out of jail." I picked her up and she was like, "I'm afraid of you. You broke my nose," like all this stuff. And I was like, "Well, stop fucking hitting your kids.
Yeah, you
Don't
do it
fucking
again, I'll
hit
break
me
the
again."
other one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And she was like, "I'm afraid of you. You can't live in the house." Like, and she kicked me out of living in the house that day.
And she pulled that card where it's like, I'm scared of my safety, even though she's the one that fucking antagonized everything.
Always the victim.
Yeah, always the victim. Yeah.
So I grabbed a
I know
trash bag.
that person.
I grabbed my school supplies, my trash bag full of clothes, and that girl whose party I went to, her parents were like, "Tell Jamie we have a guest bedroom for her. She can stay with us." This is the first time I was homeless. I've been homeless a couple times. And but I actually had a place to stay this time. And I stayed with them for like 3 or 4 months. The mom bought me, she was like, "Wait, do you need contacts?" Like, I was out of everything because my mom never went and ordered me all my contacts, like enough for
Wow.
like 3 months. Made me school lunch every day. I used to get like the free lunch. Like, I had my own room. They were like so good. They were like family dinners. Like, we'd go for walks with the dog. And I was like, "Oh my God." People have no idea how like grateful they should be for what
Yeah.
they have. Like the simplest things.
I
I was
you
like, this
took
is
the
a
words out of my
different
mouth.
lifestyle.
Where I'm like, people like us, like we understand.
And I felt uncomfortable in it.
We understand gratitude. We understand
Mm-hmm.
showing it because we never received it. But also, it's like when you're in those situations with those great people, you're literally like, listen, dude, you don't want to clean your room because you're being lazy.
Yeah.
You're like breaking it down to your friends and like tell them, hey, listen, you're doing this because of this. You've actually got a great mom. Like this is actually a great person.
It would piss me off when my friends would be like, fuck you, mom. And I would literally be like, don't fucking talk to your mom like that. I'll talk to my mom like that because she's a piece of shit. But
Yeah.
don't you talk to that sweet baby angel you have as a mother.
Absolutely.
Like you better sit there and kiss her toes and be so grateful she shows up for you and tells you she loves you and like has your back.
Yeah.
And you're mad you can't go hang out with your friend. Shut up and stop being a pussy.
Yeah.
It makes me angry. It would
Love-
make me
love that
so
lady.
angry.
Love that lady.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or I will. You know what I mean? Or I'll fucking do it.
I will fucking take your spot. You go live in my house and complain about your mom. You'll be right back.
Yeah,
Like a little, like a,
Enjoy Christmas stockings that change every year because the dude changes.
what's a Christmas stocking?
That's what I feel like. You know that scene in Deadpool where have you seen Deadpool?
Yeah.
Okay, you know the scene where he meets Vanessa and they're basically doing. She's like, I had to sleep in a dishwasher box, and they're like, you had a dishwasher? That's what I feel like with you sometimes when me and you talk. I really do. I feel like it's just like me and you had such a similar thing.
Yeah.
That it really does. It just goes right together most of the time. We always try to close this on something positive but something meaningful, and because it can the content can get kind of crazy and dark. But the thing we always try to do is if you have any parenting advice to give to another parent, like right now, based on your own childhood experience, based on what you went through, what advice would you give to other parents?
I think the best thing that you can do is pour into yourself. And I think some parents get so lost in their kids that they lose themselves, and that causes a lot of the problems. Like stress causes so many issues.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that I see a lot of moms who don't practice self-care. You're teaching your kid to sacrifice themselves and not practice self-care in the name of taking care of the kid.
Yeah.
And there's sometimes they need to see you choosing yourself so that they can become independent. Do you know what I mean? Like, I think there's like healthy dynamics, but I think if you don't heal your shit, it will absolutely you'll pass it on. And so
That's why
it's
it's
like,
called generational trauma.
my biggest advice would be do not fucking have kids until you have had that kind of like awakening in your own life where you're like, I'm going to start working on this, you know?
Fix yourself before you try to fix someone else.
Yeah, I've dated so many guys who hate their dads or hate their moms and hate how they like treated them. And it's like, and I hear it all the time of like, well, my dad did this and like, I just was never good enough. And then they treat you when they're upset and don't have control of their emotions or the emotional intelligence because they haven't tackled what is really affecting them. They treat you the exact same way. And then they can't see it the same way because there's no way you're a victim the way they were as a kid.
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm saying? And so
Yeah.
it's like if you don't fix that shit, that's how you're gonna treat your kid.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I think a lot of parents and like not getting along with their kids, it has to do with them not being able to see eye to eye because they haven't done the fucking work.
Yeah. That old golden rule, treat people the way that you want to be treated, right? It's a good rule, but it's not an easy rule.
Mm-hmm.
And it requires a lot of like reflection and introspection and like knowing truly like the love that you need to receive and then putting that love back out into the world. And I think parents, parents are people. And I'll say that a million times. And it's like people need love, but people need love from within and they need love from the outside as well. And if those two don't meet, you're not going to grow anything meaningful.
Yeah.
And the whole point of having children is to grow something meaningful. Mm-hmm. It's to grow something that contributes to the world, that makes your life better. And it's this beautiful synergy, is what it's supposed to be in my mind.
Yeah.
And I think that we have a responsibility. I'm a dad, so I have a responsibility to honor the legacy of being a father and doing everything that it takes to get over what I went through as a kid. And I'm still working on it every day. And in no way am I perfect, and no way am I ever going to be. The only thing I can ever be is okay. And I have to show my kids that. Because if I don't, this trauma repeats.
Yeah.
And then my grandchildren suffer. And then we end up with this line of people that never addressed the root of our issues.
It's so weird. My mom would teach me to be like strong in moments and have tact, and she instilled so many good things in me when I was a kid. And then like, don't let men like walk all over you, blah, blah, blah. And then I watched her completely turn. And I remember like being like, what? You taught me this and you're not following through. And it's because she hadn't done like the healing work. She knew it, but she hadn't done the work to actually put it into practice.
Yeah.
So I think that's like a big thing. I do want to like leave with what helped me if you have a similar family life as us. Yeah, at least have a normal conversation with my mom for the first time was this book called How to Stop Walking on Eggshells. I think it's about a book. It's really about like BPD, but if they're BPD, narcissism, whatever, they're all kind of in the same category. It's personality disorder. I read this book and it was the first time I had ever read my experience. I literally thought I was the only person going through what I was going through and like no one understood.
Yeah, I mean, I know what you mean.
And not only did it like explain a scenario, it would explain like what that person meant by it so you could understand their brain. And then it gave you tools and like things to say when they say certain things and how to like de-escalate. And I remember I was like, okay, I read the book. I'm going to try to practice with my mom. And I broke no contact and I went over to her house and she started getting like worked up. And I realized it wasn't personal to me. It was like her getting triggered and it's not me. But even though she's taking it out on me, so I was able to separate myself from it. And then I was able to like use the book things to like get her to calm down. And it was the first time I had like a whole conversation without my mom going off. It was crazy. So that's a bit of positivity for anyone. If you want to do the work.
One of the books that helped me, and I got a workbook, I'm still working on it, but it's From Broken Boy to Mended Man. And it's pretty good just as far as like some of the trauma work in it. It's a good workbook. But another weird book that helped me deal with trauma was Atomic Habits by James Clear. And it really just taught me the power of a habit, of building healthy habits and making sure like you make your bed every day and doing things, finding what things mean to you and increase your quality of life and making that habitual.
Yep.
That did more for me than a lot of therapy.
I was listening to like Grant Cardone and all like who's the other one? Vaynerchuk. Gary Vaynerchuk.
Yeah, I think
like people like that. Or like if you want to be successful, Eric Thomas. If you want to succeed as badly as you want to breathe, then you'll be successful. And I was like, yeah, damn right. And it got me. I'm like, I'm not weak for my trauma. I'm this badass motherfucker.
Yeah.
That stuff definitely helped me more than therapy.
Yeah.
Sometimes therapy keeps you stuck in victim mindset.
It can.
I think sometimes it's important to just be a person.
It can. You know what I mean? You go to too many meetings and too many things, and you just get too used to that being your narrative. I went through this, I went through this, I went through this.
It's not your identity.
Yeah, at no point are you saying I am this.
Yeah.
You're saying I was this. I went through this, and that can cloud your definition of your self-identity.
Yeah. And it's like, that's when people look at me, they'll take 2 looks at me and like what I post on the internet and be like, oh, trauma, like daddy issues, like she's had a checkered past, whatever. And it's like, again, I will walk a mile around you over and over and lap you in like the work I've done. Yeah. Just because you had a good life, oh, congrats, you're a shitty person.
People should be happier if we have a longer list of things that we know we need. Yeah. And I know it seems like, in relationships, like, oh, that seems like a lot of work, whatever it may be. But like, I know I need these things. Mm-hmm. And I'm letting you know that these things are needed.
That's good communication.
That's good communication.
That's what came out of it.
Yep. Well, buddy, you've been through a lot.
Yes, I have.
I know, I loved having you on. I will have you on again.
Yeah, I'm down. There's so much more we could talk about.
I know, there's so much more. You're amazing. Please check her out, everybody. Check out, Two Girls, One Blunt. It's a fun pod. And thank you so much for sharing everything you shared. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, of course.
This was fun, genuinely. And to all the Tammy's Boy listeners out there, Tammy's Boys and Girls, thank you guys so much for coming in for another episode of Tammy's Boy. I've been Jon Carden, and do you have anything coming up that you want to plug?
I have so many shows around here. Let me see. When does this come out?
It'll probably come out in like a month, a month and a half.
Nope, nothing to plug.
Okay.
Except if you want to get me a gift for Christmas, I have an Amazon wish list. Help me, my mom never got me gifts.
Please, sir, may I have some more? This has been Tammy's Boy. Thank you guys for tuning in. I've been John.
Did your family bring joy? Was your childhood destroyed? Hey, it's Tammy's Boy. Is your mama alive? Did your daddy make you cry? Hey,